My husband demanded a DNA test while I was in the middle of giving birth, because his mother told him the baby couldn't be his. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. The delivery room was bright and loud, machines beeping, nurses moving fast, my doctor giving calm instructions. I was drenched in sweat, gripping the rails, pushing through the kind of pain that makes you forget how to breathe. My husband, Caleb, stood by my side, or at least he was supposed to. But he wasn't holding my hand. He was standing stiff, staring down at his phone. Between contractions, I tried to look at him. His face looked pale, like he'd seen a ghost. Then I heard the vibration again, another text. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. I didn't know it then, but that text was from his mother, Margot. Caleb's mom never liked me. She said I wasn't wife material. Too quiet. Too independent. She called me lucky that Caleb took me in. I always ignored her, thinking once the baby came, she'd soften up. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was just about to push when Caleb suddenly said, "Wait." I blinked at him, thinking he was panicking about the birth. But then he said words I'll never forget. "I want a DNA test before I sign anything." Everything stopped. The nurse who was helping me froze. The doctor looked at him like he'd lost his mind. My chest went cold, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "Caleb, what did you just say?" I asked, breathless. He swallowed hard, eyes avoiding mine. "Mom says the timing doesn't make sense. She said the baby came early, and she deserves to know." I screamed, not from the contractions this time, but from the pain of hearing those words. I'd been with Caleb for 6 years. Married for 3. There wasn't a single thing in our timeline that didn't add up. I knew exactly what Margot was doing. She had finally planted enough doubt in his mind to break us. "Are you serious? You think I cheated on you? Now, here." I managed to choke out, my voice shaking. He rubbed his face. "Just please, Lyra. Let's get the test done. Then everything will be fine." "Fine." He said it like it was nothing, like accusing your wife of cheating during childbirth was a casual request. The doctor told him sharply to step out of the room if he couldn't be supportive. He didn't move. I saw a flash of guilt in his eyes, but he stayed quiet. The nurses exchanged looks, and one whispered something under her breath. I pushed through the last contractions without looking at him. When I finally heard my baby cry, that tiny, perfect sound, I turned my head to see Caleb. He wasn't crying. He wasn't smiling. He was still staring at that phone, like he was waiting for his mother's approval before feeling anything. In that moment, I knew something inside me had broken for good. We met at a campus coffee shop in Ohio during senior year. I was working part-time behind the counter, and Caleb used to come in after his evening classes. He ordered the same thing every time, black coffee with too much sugar, and stayed longer than anyone else, pretending to study while sneaking glances at me. He wasn't smooth, but he was kind. When he finally asked me out, he stammered so much that I said yes just to stop his suffering. After graduation, we rented a small apartment above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon all year round. We didn't have much, just mismatched furniture, and a shared dream that hard work could build something steady. Caleb got a job at a local construction firm, and I started teaching art at an elementary school. We built a quiet rhythm, laundry on Sundays, movie nights on Fridays, laughter in between. The first time I met his mother, Margot, she looked me up and down like she was evaluating a car she didn't plan to buy. Her smile was polite but thin. She asked about my plans after marriage, the kind of question that sounds innocent but isn't. When I told her I wanted to keep working, she said, "A husband needs a wife who's home, not a roommate with a paycheck." Caleb laughed it off, but I could tell he was uneasy. After the wedding, her calls started coming more often. At first, she asked about recipes or holiday plans. Then her tone changed. She'd remind Caleb of ex-girlfriends who treated him better, or joke about how quickly I said yes to marriage. I thought she was just overprotective, but slowly, her words started echoing in our home. Sometimes, when I came home late from parent-teacher meetings, Caleb would ask who I'd been chatting with so long. I'd laugh, thinking he was teasing, but his eyes stayed serious. If I didn't answer a text right away, he'd mention it later, quiet but sharp. I brushed it off as stress. His job was demanding, and Margot often complained about his distance. Then small things began to disappear. Flowers on anniversaries, morning kisses, the way he used to reach for my hand without thinking. I caught him staring at his phone more often, then tucking it away when I entered the room. Once, I saw a message from his mother flash on the screen. "You sure she's being honest with you?" He deleted it before I could say anything. When I asked what was wrong, he'd sigh and say, "Nothing, just tired." But the silence between us grew heavier each week. Nights stretched long. He'd stay up late watching TV, saying he couldn't sleep. I'd lie beside him, staring at the ceiling, feeling something cold settle between us. Still, I told myself it was just a rough patch, that love didn't vanish overnight. I held on to the memory of that boy in the coffee shop, the one who once looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I didn't know it then, but that memory was already fading into something I couldn't reach anymore. Margot started showing up unannounced, always with that same forced smile, and the smell of her strong perfume filling every corner of the house. She'd bring food we didn't ask for and act surprised when I'd already cooked. "Oh," she'd say, lifting the lid off my casserole. "I suppose you tried your best." Her tone made my stomach twist, but I kept quiet. Caleb said she was just trying to help. Her visits stretched longer each time. She'd sit at the kitchen table, crossing her legs neatly, pointing out little things I should improve. One afternoon she glanced at my dress and said, "You've really filled out, haven't you? Are you sure you're not eating for 2.5?" I laughed weakly, pretending it was funny, but Caleb didn't say a word. He just scrolled on his phone. As my belly grew, Margot's comments got sharper. She talked about the baby's due date like it was a math problem she couldn't solve. "You said you found out in March, right? But that would make the baby due earlier." Maybe I'm wrong," she'd murmur, loud enough for Caleb to hear. I could feel her planting something dangerous between us, and he was letting her. Caleb began spending more time away from home. When I asked where he'd been, his answers got shorter. Sometimes he'd snap, "Why are you suddenly keeping tabs on me?" The irony burned, but I stayed calm. I tried to remind him we were supposed to be partners, that soon we'd have a child depending on us. He'd nod, distracted, and say he was just tired. Margot started calling him every evening. I'd hear her voice through the speaker, low and concerned. She'd say things like, "I just want to make sure you're not being naive. People change during pregnancy." Once, I walked in while he was on the phone, and he quickly ended the call. He looked guilty, then irritated, as if I'd interrupted something private. One Saturday, she came over with a basket of vitamins and brochures. She said she wanted to help organize my medical papers. I told her I already had everything sorted, but she insisted. While I was folding laundry, I caught her in the bedroom, going through my prenatal folder. The sight stopped me cold. She pretended to be surprised when I asked what she was doing. "Oh, just checking your appointment dates," she said lightly, like she had every right. "You know, these things can get mixed up. Wouldn't want any confusion about when you conceived." My hands trembled as I took the papers from her. Caleb walked in just then, and she sighed dramatically, saying, "I was only trying to help, but I guess I'm not welcome." He glanced between us, then at me, and said, "You could have just let her look, Lyra." That night, I lay in bed listening to the quiet. Margot's perfume still lingered on the sheets, and Caleb was facing the wall, pretending to sleep. I realized then that she didn't just want control over him. She wanted to erase me piece by piece, until there was nothing left for him to defend. I tried to hold the pieces together, even when it felt like everything inside me was coming apart. I found a counselor downtown who specialized in couples therapy, hoping a stranger could help us find our way back. Caleb agreed to go, though his eyes stayed fixed on the floor the entire session. When the therapist asked what brought us there, he said, "Just communication issues." I wanted to scream that it was more than that it was trust slowly dying, but I stayed quiet. After the second session, he stopped coming. "It's not helping," he said, shrugging. "We can handle our problems ourselves." Except he didn't want to handle anything. He just wanted distance. I started planning family dinners, thinking maybe sitting together, sharing food, could remind him of how we used to laugh. I made his favorite dishes, the ones he once begged me to cook every week. He barely touched them. Most nights he claimed to be full or said work had drained his appetite. I'd sit across the table, pushing food around my plate, watching him drift further away without even realizing he was leaving. I wrote him letters, short, careful words trying to reach the part of him that used to listen. I slipped them into his work bag or left them on his nightstand. He never mentioned them, never left a reply. I found one unopened weeks later, folded perfectly, like he didn't even want to read what I had to say. By the 8th month, he'd moved to the couch. He told me it was so I could sleep better, claiming my tossing kept him awake. I wanted to believe him, but the gap between us had already become a wall. I'd wake in the middle of the night, my hand reaching for the space beside me, only to feel cold sheets. Sometimes I could hear the television downstairs, its faint blue light flickering under the door until morning. Intimacy vanished. The smallest touches felt strained. When I reached for his hand, he'd pull away gently, saying he didn't want to hurt me or the baby. He kissed me once out of habit, and even that felt mechanical, like a man performing a duty he didn't believe in anymore. One night, I woke to the sound of his voice. The house was quiet except for the low murmur of him speaking in the hallway. I stayed still, listening. His tone was low, tense. Then I heard it, his whisper that sliced through the dark. "I just need proof, Mom." My heart dropped. "Proof." He paused, as if waiting for her to answer, then sighed heavily. I know. I just can't ask yet. She'll think I'm accusing her." He went silent after that, the kind of silence that fills every corner of her. I turned to my side, staring at the ceiling, the baby shifting inside me. I finally understood that he wasn't fighting with me. He was fighting the lies she fed him, and he was losing. And maybe, just maybe, so was I. The pain came in waves, deep and sharp, like my body was tearing itself open. I gripped the sides of the bed, gasping for air, my heart pounding faster than the monitors could catch. The room smelled like antiseptic and sweat. Nurses moved quickly, calling out numbers, checking the monitor, wiping my forehead. I searched for Caleb, expecting to find his hand in mine. He stood near the wall, arms folded tight across his chest, his phone glowing in his hand. His face was unreadable, distant. Every few seconds, the screen lit up again. He looked down each time, jaw clenched, as if whatever he was reading mattered more than the child I was fighting to bring into the world. "Caleb," I whispered between contractions. "Please, I need you." He didn't answer. The doctor leaned in and said gently, "Lyra, it's time to push." I nodded, focusing on the rhythm of my breathing. But before I could brace myself, Caleb's voice cut through the air. "I need a DNA test before I sign anything." For a second, no one moved. The nurses froze mid-step. The doctor looked at him like she hadn't heard right. My mind went blank. The sound of the heart monitor filled the silence. Steady, mechanical, cruelly normal. "What?" I breathed out, barely able to form the word. He didn't meet my eyes. I need to be sure." His tone was calm, almost practiced. "Mom said there are rules about this kind of thing." "I can't." "Stop talking," the doctor snapped, her voice sharp. "Not now." But then came another sound, faint, tinny, coming from his phone. A woman's voice, echoing through the speaker. "Margot, don't let her trick you, son," she said, slow and deliberate. "You know what I told you. Protect yourself." I froze. Even through the haze of pain, I recognized her voice. I felt something inside me collapse. My body trembled, not from the contractions this time, but from pure disbelief. "Turn that off," the nurse barked. She stepped forward, reaching for his phone, but he pulled back. The doctor's focus snapped between us and the monitor. "Lyra," she said, "you need to push now. We can't wait." Tears blurred my vision. "Caleb, please," I said, barely a whisper. "Our baby, just hold my hand." He didn't move. He stayed right where he was, watching, silent. The next contraction hit hard. I screamed, biting down on the inside of my lip until I tasted blood. The nurse squeezed my shoulder, whispering encouragement, but it all sounded far away. My world had shrunk to pain and betrayal, the kind that burns even deeper than labor itself. When the baby's cry finally filled the room, I turned my head toward him. For one fragile moment, I thought he'd break. Come closer, say something, but he just stood there, still clutching that phone, staring at the tiny bundle in the nurse's arms like it was a question he didn't want the answer to. And right then, I knew the child wasn't the only one born in that. Something inside me had been born too. Something colder, quieter, stronger than the woman I'd been before. The house was too quiet. Every sound felt loud. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floor, the faint breathing of the baby beside me. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, holding Aiden against my chest. His tiny fingers curled around mine, soft and perfect, while the world outside went on like nothing had happened. It had been 5 days since we came home. Caleb hadn't called. Not once. The hospital discharge papers still lay folded on the kitchen counter with his signature missing. I told myself he just needed time, that maybe guilt would pull him back, but the empty driveway said otherwise. On the third day, flowers arrived. A neat white box, tied with a ribbon, no name at first glance. I thought maybe they were from a friend or one of my co-workers. When I opened the card, my stomach turned. "Congratulations, if he's yours." The handwriting was smooth, practiced. "Margot's." I threw the card in the trash, but the words stuck like a stain I couldn't scrub out. Every time I looked at Aiden's face, I saw Caleb's eyes, his chin, his mouth. And still, I heard his mother's voice whispering doubt in the back of my head. Nights were the hardest. Aiden cried often, his tiny body adjusting to the world. I'd pace the floor with him in my arms, whispering nonsense songs to keep him calm. The shadows on the walls felt heavy. Sometimes I caught myself talking out loud, as if Caleb might answer from the next room. But the couch stayed untouched, the blanket folded neatly where he left it. The exhaustion sank deep, heavier than the pain from the stitches or the sleepless nights. Some mornings, I'd sit in bed long after sunrise, staring at nothing, trying to remember who I was before everything fell apart. The house smelled faintly of baby powder and silence. When the phone finally rang, it wasn't him. It was my sister, Reese. She didn't ask for permission. She just showed up that evening, suitcase in hand, face set with quiet determination. She looked around the room, saw the untouched meals, the laundry piling up, the dark circles under my eyes, and said softly, "You're not doing this alone anymore." Reese moved through the house like sunlight through an open window. She made coffee, folded blankets, hummed while she held Aiden so I could shower. For the first time in days, the air didn't feel so heavy. One night, as we sat together on the couch, she looked at me and said, "You need to get that test done." I stared at her, too tired to argue. "Why should I have to prove what I already know?" "Because it's not for them," she said quietly. "It's for you." The words stayed with me long after she went to bed. I looked at Aiden sleeping in his bassinet, his tiny chest rising and falling, and felt something shift. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to end their lies myself. I reached for my phone and opened the clinic's website. My fingers trembled as I filled out the form, but this time, the fear wasn't for losing Caleb. It was for finding myself again. The envelope came on a gray morning, slid halfway under the front door. I knew what it was before I even picked it up. The weight of it felt final. My name was printed neatly across the front, the clinic's logo stamped in the corner. My hands shook as I tore it open. 2 pages. Plain black ink. Words that changed everything and nothing at all. Result: 99.99% probability of paternity. For a long time, I just stared at that number. It didn't bring relief. It didn't bring anger. It was quiet inside me, the kind of silence that comes after a storm when you realize there's nothing left to rebuild. Reese walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. She saw the paper in my lap and froze. "It's done." I nodded. She waited for tears that didn't come. I folded the pages carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and said, "I know what I'm going to do." That night, after Aiden finally fell asleep, I went to the desk in the corner of the living room. The air was still, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock. I opened our joint bank account on my laptop and stared at the numbers glowing on the screen. Every dollar we had saved together, vacations never taken, a future never built. My fingers moved slowly, deliberate. I transferred every cent into my name. There was no satisfaction, just a calm certainty. It wasn't revenge. It was closure written in currency. Then I opened the closet. His clothes still hung neatly in rows, shirts pressed, jackets lined up like soldiers waiting for orders that would never come. I began taking them down one by one, folding them carefully into boxes. I didn't rush. I wanted everything perfect, orderly, just the way he liked things. When the last box was sealed, I sat at the table with a blank sheet of paper. The pen hovered for a moment before I wrote. "You wanted proof. Here it is. But you'll never get me back." I placed the DNA results behind the letter, slipped them both into a large envelope, and sealed it with one sharp press of my thumb. Reese appeared in the doorway, watching quietly. "You're sending it to him?" I shook my head. "Not to him. To his office." She didn't ask why. She already knew. The next morning, I dressed Aiden, fed him, and left the house for the first time in weeks. The air was cold, crisp against my skin. I drove to the courier service, handed over the envelope, and wrote down his office address with steady hand. The clerk smiled politely and said it would arrive by noon. I thanked her and walked out without looking back. On the way home, I stopped at a light and glanced at the rearview mirror. For the first time, my reflection didn't look small. It looked alive. I whispered to myself, "This isn't revenge. It's freedom." Back at the house, sunlight spilled through the window. Aiden stirred in his carrier, and I reached out to touch his hand. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and real, grounding me. Somewhere downtown, Caleb would open that envelope, surrounded by his co-workers, the truth staring him in the face. I didn't need to see his reaction. I'd already won by walking away. He showed up 3 days later. No warning, no message, just the sound of his truck in the driveway and the slam of a door. I was in the living room, rocking Aiden to sleep, when I heard his footsteps racing up the porch. For a second, my body tensed the way it used to when I still hoped he'd come home to us. Then I remembered what I'd sent him, and why. The knocking was frantic. I didn't move at first. He called my name, voice cracked and desperate. When I finally opened the door, the man standing there barely looked like the one I married. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes red, hair a mess. He smelled like sleepless nights and guilt. "Lyra," he breathed, "please. Just listen." I didn't say anything. I turned and walked toward the living room. He followed, closing the door behind him, words spilling out in a rush. "I got the envelope. I didn't know." She said. She made it sound like. He stopped when he saw Aiden. The baby stirred, eyes blinking open, tiny mouth forming a soft yawn. Caleb's face twisted, pain and shame colliding all at once. He reached out a trembling hand, but froze before touching him. "She lied," he said finally. "Mom lied about everything. The messages, the dates, even the appointment you missed. She said you were meeting someone. I saw the screenshots, Lyra. I thought they were real." I rocked the baby gently, keeping my eyes on Aiden's face. "You thought wrong," I said quietly. "I confronted her," he went on. "She admitted it after I showed her the results. She said she only wanted to protect me." He laughed bitterly. "Protect me from what? From my own family?" I didn't answer. The rhythm of the rocking chair filled the silence. He took a shaky breath and dropped to his knees beside me. Please, I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't shut me out. For the first time, I looked directly at him. His eyes were swollen, pleading. Once, I would have done anything to ease that look. But not anymore. You believed her more than me, I said. My voice came out steady, flat. That's all I needed to know. He blinked, confused. Lyra, I was scared. You don't understand what she... I cut him off with a quiet, no, Caleb. You don't understand what you did. He pressed his hands to his face, shoulders shaking. I destroyed everything, he whispered. I stood up slowly, still holding Aiden, his warmth steady against my chest. You didn't destroy it, I said, walking toward the door. You gave me the truth. And now I can finally move on. He looked up at me, eyes wet. Please don't go. But I already had. I opened the door, the cool air rushing in. Aiden stirred again, tiny fingers curling in my shirt. I didn't look back as I stepped outside. The sound of his sobs followed me onto the porch, fading into the distance as I closed the door behind us. She called first, her voice soft and trembling like nothing had ever happened. Lyra, sweetheart, can we talk? She sounded smaller than I remembered, the sharp edges gone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Just once, I said, keeping my tone flat. We'll meet at the cafe on Main Street. 15 minutes. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting by the window with a cup of untouched tea. Her hair was pinned back perfectly, lipstick the same shade of red she wore the day I met her. She smiled when she saw me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Lyra, she began, reaching across the table. I'm so glad you agreed. I've been so worried about you. I never meant for things to get so. Don't, I interrupted. You meant exactly what happened. Her hand froze midair. That's not fair, she said softly. I was trying to protect my son. From what? I asked, leaning back. From the wife who loved him? From the child that carries his face? Color drained from her cheeks. She reached for her purse, fumbling for tissues she didn't need. You don't understand. He was so easily led. I didn't want him to get hurt again. I let the silence hang for a long moment, watching her squirm. Then I slid a small envelope across the table. She looked down, curious, and opened it with shaky fingers. Inside was a single photograph of Aiden, wrapped in a thin piece of paper. Her eyes softened as she looked at his face. He's beautiful, she whispered. He looks just like Caleb. I know, I said. And that's exactly why you'll never meet him. Her head snapped up. What? There's a note inside, I said calmly. Read it. She unfolded the paper. In my handwriting, just a single line. You'll never meet him. For a moment, she didn't speak. Her lip trembled, and the mask she always wore started to crack. Lyra, please. Don't punish me like this. He's my grandson. I stood, picking up my coat. No, he's my son. And after everything you did, you don't get to call yourself family. She reached out, grabbing my wrist. Caleb won't let you do this, she hissed, desperation creeping into her voice. I met her eyes and said quietly, he already did. Her hand dropped. I turned and walked out without looking back. Through the window, I could see her still sitting there, staring at the photo like it was something she didn't deserve to touch. Later, Caleb called. His voice was tired, hollow. Mom's been trying to reach me. I told her not to call again. I didn't respond. I just listened to the quiet between us, then said, Good. Margot's empire of control collapsed the same way she built it, slowly, through her own lies. Caleb stopped visiting her, stopped answering messages. Word spread through their small circle that she rarely left the house anymore. I felt no satisfaction, no anger, just distance. Some endings don't need fireworks or revenge. Sometimes silence is enough to bury a person completely. Spring came quietly that year, the kind that slips in through open windows without asking. The apartment smelled like coffee and baby lotion, a softer world than the one I left behind. The walls were bare except for a single shelf lined with tiny picture frames. Aiden's first smile, his first steps, the day we moved in. Each photo was proof of survival, captured in gentle light. I'd started a new job at a small art studio near the harbor, teaching classes on weekends. The space was filled with paint-stained tables and kids with messy hands, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Reese still dropped by every few days, bringing groceries or new baby clothes, though she pretended it was just to check the locks. She didn't say it out loud, but I knew she was proud of how far I'd come. Aiden grew fast, his laughter filling every quiet corner that used to echo with loneliness. He had Caleb's dimples in my eyes, a strange mix of what was lost and what stayed. Sometimes, when I watched him sleep, the past would press at the edge of my thoughts. Caleb's face, his voice on the day everything shattered. But it didn't hurt like before. It was just a memory now, one I'd learned to carry without letting it crush me. Letters started arriving a few months after we moved. Plain envelopes, his handwriting on the front. The first time I saw one, I almost tore it open. But something in me hesitated. I placed it in a drawer and let it sit. More came after that, apologies, explanations, maybe promises. I never read them. Some nights I'd take the stack out, hold it for a minute, then tuck it away again. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. There's only one picture of him left in the apartment. It sits inside a small wooden box beside Aiden's baby blanket. I keep it for one reason, so that when he's older, I can tell him the truth without bitterness. He deserves to know who his father was and the lesson he left behind. If someone can doubt your loyalty once, they'll do it again. Sometimes, I think about what I would say if Caleb ever showed up at the door again. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe I'd just close it gently, like I was finally closing the last chapter of a story that once felt endless. Tonight, the city outside is quiet. The rain has stopped, leaving the windows streaked with silver. I sit in the rocking chair, Aiden nestled against my chest, his breathing soft, his tiny hand rests over my heart, and I feel his warmth seep into me, steady and pure. I hum to him, the same tune I used to whisper when the nights felt unbearable. He stirs, sighs, and drifts deeper into sleep. I look down at his face, the only proof I ever needed, and whisper softly against his hair. You were always enough. They just weren't. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away, or should I have given them one more chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.